Hi everyone, and welcome to another Sunday Zoom meeting and another podcast episode. And a very happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone from Ireland today. So let's get on with the meeting. Now, our group is getting enormous. We're coming up to 6,000 members, and um, between the increase in questions from the increased membership and with the extra time I'm spending doing the commentary on the workbook lessons every day, the questions are mounting up. So if you have asked a question in the group and you're going, why was my question not answered? It's because I haven't gotten to it yet. And so what I wanted to do for today's meeting was to have it be a questions and answer session. So I'm going to go through the questions and pick them off from the group. So for all those who love the question and answers part of the meeting, this will be good news. To the rest of you, we'll have a return to our normal scheduling next week. So let's have a look. Okay. Question number one. I'm not going to give names. Hi, Keith. I know that when I am insane, and I realize it sometimes, I feel it so strongly, the anger, frustration, etc., that it is hard to calm down and get to my awareness, to forgive myself. What is the best way to handle these intense feelings? The first thing that I want to say about this is that we need to try to bear in mind the temptation is always to keep your separateness, to keep your ego, and look for the Holy Spirit's answer. That's always the temptation. So when we say something like, to calm down and get to my awareness, that's really saying, so I, the ego, can blend with the Holy Spirit. And the ego and the Holy Spirit can't communicate like that. And so what it's really, really, really important to bear in mind is you are awareness. You don't have awareness. That's the error. That's the mistake. That's what will get you trapped in the flypaper. How do I get to awareness? So I am thinks it's I am this and I am that, and I am this and I am that is trying to say, how do I become I am? But that doesn't work. You've accepted the limitation. You've accepted the lie. You've accepted the concept of what you are. And now you're saying, well, how do I become without concepts? So that's not the Course in Miracles process. The process is you have to look at the error without judgment in order to let it go. So we don't get to awareness. We release ourselves from identification with thoughts, feelings, and stories and concepts. And you do that by looking at them without judgment. So, what am I? What is it that I am? I am that which is aware of thoughts coming and going, but that isn't coming and going. I am that which is aware of emotions rising and falling, but which is not itself rising and falling. I am that which is aware of the sight of the ocean, the sound of the birds singing, the breeze, the taste of coffee. I am that which is aware of all experience. And all those things are objects in awareness, objects in consciousness. The seeing, the hearing, the feeling, the touching, the thoughts, the feelings, they're all objects in consciousness. Um, and what I am is that which is aware of all that. That which is aware of all objects, but that is not itself an object. And so the awareness of the sight of the sea, the taste of the coffee, the smell of the rain, the thoughts that come and go, the feelings that rise and fall, the awareness of all experience is itself without any qualities, without any objective qualities whatsoever. The awareness of sadness isn't itself sad. The awareness of anxiety isn't itself anxious. And so awareness, what you are, is without qualities. It registers all objects within awareness, but is itself without objective qualities. And that's what Jesus calls the light of the world. That's what he calls the light on the other side of the clouds in the workbook lessons we've been doing. So the clouds are the thoughts and the feelings and the stories and the sensations, all of that. And what is it that's aware of all the clouds, but is not itself a cloud? What is aware of all experience, but, is itself without any objective qualities? And that's awareness. That's the truth of what we are in the Holy Spirit. So I am not the thoughts that come and go. Jesus calls them sick imaginings. And he also said they don't exist. You have no personal thoughts. And so what's the noise in your head? Nothing. It doesn't exist. It means nothing. And so it's not what you are. And so what the forgiveness process does, what the miracle process does, same thing, is it restores to my attention, restores to my awareness what it is I am. That is without objective qualities. So before the miracle, the awareness that I am is only apparently mixed up and lost in the sick imaginings, the thoughts and the feelings and the stories, and thinks it's the thinker of the thoughts and the feeler of the feelings, and the one the stories are about. So that's mindlessness. And the miracle is what restores awareness to itself. I realize I am not the thoughts that are coming and going in my mind. The judgments are not mine. I am not the feelings. I'm not the stories. I am what is aware of all that, but unchanged by any of it. I've said it before, and I say it to all my clients, and I'll keep saying it. One of the best practices you can do on a daily basis is saying to yourself, what am I? And listen to what thoughts tell you you are. And they'll say, well, you're a middle-aged guy. And you'll go, that's a concept, that's a thought. So what am I? And listen to everything your mind wants to tell you you are. You're a pretty good person in an evil world. Concept, just a thought. Jesus says everyone feels like he must solve the riddle of himself, the concept of the self. Who am I? What am I? And the answer is very simple. Salvation can be seen as nothing more than the escape from concepts. What are you? You are that which nothing conceptualizes. You're that which is aware of all experience, but that is itself without objective qualities. That's the truth of who you are. And all you have to do is look with no judgment at the thoughts that are going on in your mind and your allegiance to them. You just look at the fact that that's happening without commentary, without judgment, without interference. It's just a noticing. That's what forgiveness is. And what's noticing? So that's the way out of hell. Hell is thinking that you are this limited, lacking concept of yourself that needs to be constantly on the defensive, constantly defending the illusion of what you are. And salvation is nothing more than the escape from concepts. And that's what forgiveness establishes. You look at your decision for the ego and you don't judge. A decision for the ego is a decision for pain, lack, limitation. Then that gets denied, split off, projected out, and I blame someone else in the world and go, you did this to me. But A Course in Miracles is saying the world can't do anything to you. Whatever you're feeling has got nothing to do with what's happening in the world. It's got to do with something you're doing with your mind, which teacher you've chosen, what you've chosen to identify as. Are you the concept? The lacking, needing, wanting, clawing, grasping, pushing and pulling? Is that what you are? And the only way out of thinking that's what you are is to look at the fact that you're choosing to be that without judgment. So you are non-judgmentally aware of your choice to be an ego. And that restores to you the non-judgmental awareness that you are. It's the way out of mindlessness. That's what you are. And that's what you share as your identity with everyone. That is God's one holy, innocent Son. That is our one identity in the Holy Spirit. Jesus says the ego is legion, but the Holy Spirit is one. So there's 8 billion wrong minds, imaginary separate selves, but actually there's just God as one Son. And the miracle restores that to my awareness. The minute I step out of identifying with thoughts and feelings and stories and know what I am outside of thoughts and feelings and stories as this non-conceptual self, as awareness, that which has no objective qualities to it. What I am, everyone is. There's a good quote in the clarification of terms. Let me see if I can grasp it fairly quickly here. Yeah, this is from the first section, Mind Spirit, paragraph 2. In this world, because the mind is split, the sons of God appear to be separate, nor do their minds seem to be joined. In this illusory state, the concept of an individual mind seems to be meaningful. It is therefore described in the Course as if it has two parts, spirit and ego. So individual mind is in inverted commas. And Jesus is saying it seems to be meaningful, so I'm going to talk to you about it that way. But there's no individual mind. Because salvation is nothing more than the escape from concepts. And when you know yourself as that which is outside of concepts, you understand this is what everyone is. It would require a concept that they weren't. It would require a concept that there is something other than this, which is outside of concepts. And so this is what the workbook lessons are all about, awakening you to the fact that there is this part of your mind which is without objective qualities, but that is which is aware of everything. So that's our identity in the Holy Spirit. So let's go back to the question. So that's why I want to say to you, it's very important not to have this idea, how do I stay in awareness? Now, I know language is woefully inadequate for talking about non-duality and these spiritual matters, but at the same time, it's important that we don't let slide the wrong ideas that are going to stick us in the flypaper. So we want to just be vigilant for when we think, because you see, mindlessness is that, well, I am this individual self. I am this separate self. I am this insane voice talking to itself that hates everyone, but kind of glosses it over and tries to be nice. So this is me. This is what I am. This is my concept of myself. And it's the flypaper is when you say, well, this is what I am and how do I fix it? Or this is how I am and this, how do I be happier? Or this is what I am and how do I choose the miracle? Or how do I choose the Holy Spirit? How do I, the insane voice talking to itself, how do I choose the Holy Spirit? Well, you can't, because you're misidentified. You don't know what you are. So you have to look at the fact that you're choosing to be the story. You, which are outside of all concepts, are choosing to be a limited, lacking story of a body. And you look at that and you don't judge yourself. You look at it without any judgment. Again, you have to avoid the flypaper. And the flypaper is, oh my God, I'm so much not at peace and I don't know what I should do about it. And I think I'm failing the course and I'm a bad course student and this shouldn't be happening. And what's my forgiveness formula? And how do I fix this? And how do I get rid of the darkness? And how do I go back to the light? Useless. Useless. You think you're an ego. There's no light there, apparently. Your concept of yourself, as Jesus says, is the shield that's blocking the light of what you are and what everything is. And so all you do is you look without judgment at the fact that you're choosing to be an ego, an imaginary separate self, an insane voice talking to itself. That's not you. So you look at that, the thing that's hurting you, doesn't matter what you're blaming in the world. What's hurting you is that you, who are limitless, invulnerable, have identified with an illusion of yourself. And now you're blaming the world for doing it to you. So that's always where we find ourselves with forgiveness. So, people will always ask, well, what do I do in this situation? And what do I do in this situation? And the situations don't matter. The problem is not, behold what is happening to me, the separate self, Keith. How do I deal with this situation as Keith? So again, that's the flypaper. That's the mindlessness. You don't know you're a mind, which is this non-conceptual identity. You think you're a brain. You think you're an insane voice talking to itself. You think you're a body. You think you can be hurt. You think you can be injured. You think you can be sick. You think you can get old. You think you can die. Those are just concepts about no one. They're just thoughts. And they're not about you, because what you are is outside of concepts. That's why Jesus tells us in the later lesson, forget every concept you have about yourself, forget every concept you have about God, forget this world, forget this course, and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. And lots of people, when they read that, go, well, Jesus doesn't really mean I should do that now. I'm sure that's something just what I should do in the future. But actually, it's what he's saying to you all along in forgiveness. He spends so many lessons saying to you, but the noise in your head isn't you. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Private thoughts are nonsense because you're not a person. You're awareness. And he gave us the analogy of going through the clouds, which are thoughts, and what you are outside of the thoughts, which is the light of the world, what everything is. Okay, let's go back to the question. I feel it so strongly, the anger, the frustration, etc., that it's hard to calm down and get my awareness to forgive myself. What is the best way to handle these intense feelings? Now, this is the other big trap, apart from flypaper. Well, it's still flypaper because it's trying to manage the emotions. It's deciding, how do I fight the darkness? How do I get rid of the darkness? How do I change the darkness? So the process is not, how do I get rid of anger and frustration in order to be awareness? That's not what this is about. That would be spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing is not being present for what's coming up. It's wanting to be somewhere else. It's wanting to push the present moment away and seek a different moment. And so once you encounter resistance, you know this is ego, because there's nothing at all to ego other than resistance, non-forgiveness of the present moment. There is nothing to ego other than this thought that says it shouldn't be like this and it should be different. So when I look to start off forgiveness and go, it shouldn't be like this, it should be different, I'm on the wrong track straight away. I'm in the ego's flypaper. Instead, I need a way of accessing the non-ego presence that I am. Awareness. So all we do in forgiveness is we drop projection. So the idea is not getting rid of or fixing anger and frustration. What we want to let go of is the idea that the world did it to me, that I'm angry at you, that I'm frustrated with work, that I'm sad about life. That's just projection. That's nonsense. Instead, what I've done is I've plunged into identification with thoughts and feelings and stories. I think I'm the thinker of thoughts. I think I'm the one the stories are about. I'm an ego. And as soon as I go into ego, as soon as I think I'm an ego, as soon as I believe my thoughts, I identify with them. I think I'm the thinker of thoughts. I accept all the concepts of what I am. Once I do that, I'm an ego, and I plunge into all the guilt that is inherent in separateness. The guilt, the self-hatred, the self-loathing, that's all there as soon as we attack the truth of what we are in the Holy Spirit, which is this non-conceptual identity, this awareness that has no objective qualities. And because it has no objective qualities, it's limitless and invulnerable. So once I'm identified as the illusion, then it's inevitable that I plunge into all this anger and self-hatred and frustration and sadness and loneliness. And then what I do is I deny it's because I'm identified as this illusion, this limitation. And now what I want to do is blame things in the world that have done it to me. But the problem is never what's happening to the separate self. The only problem is you think you're a separate self. That's why Jesus says there's one problem and one solution to every apparent problem, because there's only one problem: thinking you're something you're not. So any of the problems we think we have are not problems. They are symptoms of the only problem there is, which is you who are outside of concepts, who have no objective qualities, have attacked the truth of what you are in the Holy Spirit to identify with a story, a self-concept, an ego identity, and then all the self-hatred and the fear and the guilt and the self-loathing is there, and it's denied and split off, and it's like, I need to find people in the world to accuse of doing this to me. So in forgiveness, it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. That's because that's just projection. That's just a lie. Whatever emotions are coming up are the emotions of ego, of being identified with an illusion of yourself. So we don't spiritually bypass anything. If there's anger coming up, I understand this is the ego's anger. If there's frustration coming up, this is the ego's frustration with itself. If there's hatred coming up, this is the ego's hatred of itself. It doesn't matter what was getting blamed, what was getting hated. That was a lie. That was projection. And so we're never spiritually bypassing. We are dropping the stories of why I feel like this, because the only reason I feel like this is because I think I'm a limited thing. I think I'm a lie. I think I'm a self-concept. That is the reason for all pain. All suffering arises on behalf of a non-existent separate self, a self-concept. But you're not concept. And so when the pain arises, that's what's causing it. You drop the blame straight away. The world is not doing it to me. I did it to me. I attacked this non-conceptual identity, this self that has no objective qualities, to lose myself and dress myself in thoughts and stories and pretend I'm a separate self in a body with a story and an innocent victim of the world. So instead, all we do with the anger, frustration, the pain, the hurt, the misery, all we do is we bring it to the non-conceptual self that we are. And you do that by looking at it without fighting it, without trying to fix it, without trying to change it, without resisting it, with non-interference. You're present with it without judging it. And you're looking on the problem the way it is, not the way you've set it up. The way you've set it up is, well, I was having a pretty good day here as an ego, and then someone came along and they did that to me, and I'm suffering now, and all frustrated, and they have no right, and how dare they? That's how you're setting it up. And Jesus is saying, now you're being shown you can escape from all suffering. All that's required is that you look on the problem the way it is and not the way you've set it up. And the problem the way it is that you have attacked your non-conceptual self, the you who has no objective qualities, to dress yourself in stories and lies and thoughts, to suffer, to feel limited, and then blame the world for doing it to you, when the only thing that did it to you was your own decision to be something other than what you are, the imaginary separate self. As Jesus says, the individual mind that doesn't really exist. And so that's what our forgiveness process. I'm sure loads of these questions, it's going to be the same thing. That's why I'm spending a bit of time on this. All that's required is you look on the problem the way it is and not the way you've set it up, with no judgment. And the beauty of that miracle process is, what is it that's looking with no judgment? That's your non-conceptual self, and mine, and everyone's, because there's only one self appearing as many. Um, and that's what forgiveness is all about. Can I simply, because the trap is, how do I fix this? This shouldn't be happening to me. How do I get rid of the anger? How do I get nonsense? Nonsense. You have to drop all resistance to it. You have to. There's such an instinctive egoic drive to fix things, to change things, to want to manipulate things to be happier. That's all ego. And to get outside of ego, we just have to allow what's happening with no judgment. And once you do that, your identity is restored to you of what is outside of concepts and what is invulnerable. Um, Now, in the beginning, it doesn't mean that by looking at the fact that you're choosing to be special, looking at the fact that you're choosing to be the story, the self made out of thoughts, it doesn't mean you have to stop. It doesn't even mean that you should try to stop. Um, all you want to do is let the light of what you are as a non-conceptual self into your mind. That's enough. Um, because again, the whole how do I choose the Holy Spirit is another flypaper scenario. You just want to feel the truth of this non-conceptual identity in the moment. Doesn't mean you have to let go of all your identifications with stories straight away. Just look at what you're doing and that it won't make you happy, and don't judge yourself. So it's really just a course in not fooling yourself. You know, if that's the miracle is not saying you have to choose the Holy Spirit. You have to stop choosing to identify with the stories. The miracle is showing you that you're choosing, but it's also showing you there's another choice, because what's looking without judgment? That's the truth of you. You don't have to let all the stories go straight away, or tomorrow, or next week, or next month, or next year. You just have to notice that you're choosing without judging yourself for it. So, certainly in my own day, when I notice some form of hatred come up, because we call this hurt and we call this pain and we call this, indignation, and we call this, but it's hate. It's a flash of hatred comes up during your day. And so for me, it doesn't matter what's after happening. When the flash of hatred comes, I just go, oh, right, there's some hatred still here. Can I allow it? Can I look on that with complete non-judgment? Can I drop all the stories and own the fact that this hatred was in my mind? And I'm aware of it now because it got projected out onto the world. But I'm taking it back from the world and going, the stories don't matter. The hatred was in my mind. And this is my opportunity to really be with it, non-judgmentally. It is not, how do I get rid of it? How do I fix it? How do I fight it? That's ego. That's the flypaper. That's nonsense. Instead, it is, can I be truly present with this without blaming anyone else for it? It is the ego's pain. It is the ego's hatred. It is the ego's fear. Can I allow it to be here so it heals in my being present with it? Because the course process is, I'm bringing the darkness to the light. That means I become the light by looking on the darkness without judging it. I don't fight the darkness. I look on it without judgment and let that process undo the darkness. It's not your job as an ego. So again, that's the big trap. Oh, I'm all upset. How do I fix it? No. How do I be fully present for these ego emotions coming up? My guilt. How do I be fully present for this without blaming anyone else for it? Can I be with it for as long as it takes, feeling the okayness of what I am that's looking without judgment? So it's always about getting back into your identity, which has no objective qualities, by looking without judgment, and then being present for the emotions without blaming them on anyone. And that's what undoes them. And that's what eventually undoes all sense of ego and separateness. Okay, so I hope that makes sense about forgiveness. I need some clarification about thoughts. I don't really understand the process. How do the impersonal thoughts of ego consciousness, sin, guilt, and fear, seemingly filter down and become the seducing, seemingly personal thoughts that I witness? Um, let's see which way we go at this. I mean, ultimately, there is no thinker of thoughts. See, the question presupposes that there is a person that has personal thoughts, but there's not. There's just thinking apparently happening. And it's just the ego thought system. But there is no one there having those thoughts. So it only seems that way when I think I'm a separate self and that I am the thinker of thoughts. But there's no thinker of thoughts. Um, that's the concept of the self, that there is a me here who is having these thoughts. That's just a concept. It's not true. And if you look at thoughts and feelings without owning them, without claiming them, if you look at them without fighting them, if you allow them to be with no judgment, um, you will feel your identity as this non-conceptual witness, this awareness that has no objective qualities, this witnessing presence. And if you're that, that's you, the decision maker, joined with the Holy Spirit. There is no separate self there having thoughts. Because remember, the decision maker is either wrong-minded or right-minded, identified with the thought of separateness or the memory of oneness, identified as a separate self in the ego or as awareness in the Holy Spirit. It can't be neither, and it can't be both. So if you are the non-judgmental awareness of thoughts and feelings happening, then there's nobody there they're happening to. You're the one who's looking. And the one that thoughts and feelings are happening to is only a concept. There's no one there. There's just you that looks in the light of the world. So there is no separate self. It's just a concept. It's not true. Um, let's talk about another analogy. If we look about, let's say, the ocean, and the ocean is full of whirlpools and waves. And supposing I think I'm a wave. From my perspective, okay, so the truth is there's just water. There's nothing to a wave apart from water. There's nothing to a whirlpool apart from water. Okay, they're all just movements in water. So there's just water. But if I think I'm a wave, I've been born as a wave. I've come into existence as this wave. I rose up. I am this separate thing. From my perspective, there are billions of other separate things, waves. But if I, the wave, realize, but actually there's nothing here except water, and I know myself again as the ocean, there are no separate things. There's just one thing, one ocean. So there's nothing to waves apart from the ocean, and the ocean never ceases being the ocean to be a wave. That's just an illusory perspective of a wave. The ocean never stops being the ocean to be a wave. There's nothing to a wave apart from the ocean. And it's the same with the awareness that you are. So all there is all these waves, thoughts and stories and feelings and sights and sounds and images. And they're all just waves in awareness, the awareness that you are. There's nothing to any of it other than awareness. It's all happening in the awareness that you are, known by the one awareness and made out of the one awareness. Just like waves on the ocean are all happening on the ocean, known only by the ocean, because there's no separate things there, there's just the ocean, and made out of the ocean. And you are what all people and bodies and animals and plants and oceans are happening in. You are that which knows all of it, and all of it is made out of what you are. But you think you're a separate self, and that veils it from you. And so the course is about the workbook lessons and forgiveness, bringing us back to this identity that looks, the one with no objective qualities. And what has no objective qualities is the truth of everything. As long as you believe you're something, you cannot know that you are the nothing that is everything. As long as you think you're something, you are limited. And you will see a warped version of the real world. You'll see it through a distorting filter. All that's here is water, waving. And all we're ever doing is falling back from the belief in the waves to the water. That is the truth of everything and everyone. It's how forgiveness reminds you what you are and what your brother is, and that you're not separate. Okay, so that's two. I hope they're helpful analogies. Let's have a look at another question here. Okay, this is kind of answered. I wonder if in general, thoughts pervade the universe like radio waves. Maybe there are high frequency waves which will equate to thoughts of unity and love. And then there are low frequency waves that equate to thoughts of fear and separation. Can our minds turn the dial to control which frequency to focus on and interpret the picked up thought? Do we have spiritual thought system and the ego thought? Please could you help me to understand the concept of thoughts and our choices based on them? And so we've just said there's just the ocean. And so, you could think about all thoughts and beliefs and stories and experiences and sights and sounds and impressions are all just waves in one ocean. Um, but the question kind of poses it as Can our mind turn the dial to control which frequency? You are the ocean in which the waves are happening. And so it's really just using either the workbook lessons or forgiveness to return out of identifying as a wave, an identity made out of thoughts, just waves in the ocean, to this non-conceptual identity we are in the Holy Spirit. And it's just this felt sense of being. It has no qualities. It is that which is aware of everything but has no qualities. That's our escape from concepts, the truth of what we are. Everything else are just lying thoughts that we believe, thoughts that haven't yet been forgiven. So you, the wave, don't have to try and pick up different waves. You, the wave, have to realize there's nothing to you except the ocean. That is what everything is. This presence, this non-conceptual self. And from there will be thoughts, there will be waves that reflect your knowing of what you are. There will be right-minded thoughts. Thoughts of forgiveness and thoughts of shared interests and thoughts of abundance and joy and the extension of that, bringing joy to what you do instead of looking for it there. But really all you ever want to do is remember that you're the ocean. You are that which has no actual qualities. That's your invulnerability and your immortality. That you have no objective qualities. The escape from concepts about what you are. You just fall back into that, and then everything the body mind does will reflect that. So I hope that makes sense. So two quite similar questions. Let's move on and do another one. Dear Keith, the following question was just posted in another group, and I'm taking the liberty of copying it and pasting it here in the hope that you'll see it and respond with your clear understanding and clarity. Here goes, and much gratitude in advance. Okay, where is heaven? Some course students believe that heaven can be fully experienced here on earth, while others do not. This latter group believe we have to first fully awaken from the dream. Then this universe will disappear and we will enter heaven. They cite numerous passages such as this. The way the question is posed is incredibly problematic. Where is heaven? Jesus is unequivocal in the course. He says, you are heaven. So you might think you're a separate self, but you're not. What you are is heaven. Because heaven is just one thing. It is God and Christ as one being, one will, no separateness. And so heaven is a perfect oneness, where there's nothing else in the oneness and nothing else outside the oneness. So heaven is pure being. And so we already are heaven. So this question of, you know, can we experience heaven here? How do we get to heaven? Well, let's see where the question goes. For you, this is a quotation from the course from chapter 19. For you realize that if you look on this and let the veil be lifted, they will be gone forever. All your friends, your protectors, and your home will vanish. Nothing that you remember now will you remember. All that will occur is that you will leave the world forever. So these are passages in support of the idea that we cannot experience heaven here on earth. Now, again, remember, you are heaven. You just think you're something else. So nothing has ever left heaven and nothing will return to heaven. Only an illusion could want to return where nothing has ever left. And so enlightenment isn't about becoming something, it's about getting rid of something, getting rid of the lies about what you are. Because you already are heaven. How could you leave what you are? God cannot come into a body, nor can you join him there. Again, one of the big errors the Course seeks to undo is the idea that I'm in a body. You are not in a body. The body is in the field of awareness that you are, which is the exercise I like to do with people regularly here in the podcasts, because that's verifiable by experience, that you're not in the body. The body is in the field of awareness you are. And Jesus says in the Course, who knows he has Christ in him sees him everywhere, except in bodies. Um, and so what the Course is saying is perfectly valid there. The body is the symbol of the world. Leave it behind. It cannot enter heaven. But I can take you there anytime you choose. Together we can watch the world disappear and its symbol vanish as it does so. God can only know himself. Heaven is a state of perfect oneness. So God can't know another. That's impossible in heaven. There's just oneness. There's knowledge. There is no knower in that which is known. There is just the knowing that Jesus calls knowledge. It is pure being. There's no consciousness in heaven. There's nothing in heaven to say, I am an I and you are you. There is just pure beingness. And that's what you already are, beingness, God, because there's nothing else to be. The extension of God is still God. No second ever comes into existence. There's only ever the first. On the other hand, those who believe we can enter heaven while still in the world have plenty of ammunition. Now, again, this is problematic. Nobody enters heaven. You are heaven. You let go of what's not you to realize you've always been heaven. So that's metaphysically the truth of it. The idea that we enter heaven, that is a concession to the belief that there is actually a separate self here who has left heaven and needs to return to heaven. But there's no separate self. And what you are is heaven. And so we're only ever undoing the belief in a separate self, specialness, individuality, the story of what I am, instead of the non-conceptual truth. Atonement might be equated with total escape from the past and total lack of interest in the future. Heaven is here. There is nowhere else. Heaven is now. There is no other time. So you already are heaven, but not the you think you are, which is a lie. It's just an identity made out of thoughts. In lesson 8, Jesus says, when you think you're thinking about the past or the future, your mind's actually blank because you're not thinking about anything. Because you can't think about the past and the future because there is no past and future. They only exist as thoughts. But they're not your thoughts. They're ego thoughts, and the ego is not you. You're this non-conceptual awareness in the Holy Spirit. So you are the now. You are the present moment. There's only the present moment. So you're not this thing in time passing through time. Images of time are passing through you, the present moment, and you're just losing your identity to them, apparently. But your identity can never be lost or changed. So when you think you're thinking about the past and the future, well, your mind's actually blank because that doesn't mean anything because you are the present moment. Heaven has come to earth at last, from which the ego's rule has kept it out so long. Heaven has come because it found a home in your relationship on earth, and earth can no longer, can hold no longer what has been given heaven as its own. And so heaven is simply, okay, so you have an apparent wrong mind, an apparent ego, an apparent identity that's a thinker of thoughts and a feeler of feelings and the one the stories are about. Um, and you have this right-minded identity as awareness, this non-conceptual self, um, this witness identity, this presence that has no objective qualities, um, that is the knower of all experience, but utterly uncolored and unchanged by any of it. Um, and the only purpose of this right-minded identity is to undo the lies, to undo the ego identity, the separate self identity. And once this right-minded identity as awareness has done its job and the ego's gone, there's no more belief in separateness. There's no more belief in individuality, sin, guilt, or fear. And then the right mind with its job done, it disappears. And now there's no identity. Which sounds frightening to an ego, but actually it's the end of suffering. There's no identity. This is the real world where there's no identity. There is no self here apart from all that is. There is just perfect oneness. The perfect oneness of heaven is reflected perfectly within the dream. There is just one thing thinging. There is just all the universe universing. One thing, God's one holy innocent son. And you're all of it, none of it. But there's no more identity per se. Because the concept of even a capital S self, does that concept mean anything if there's nothing else apart from it? And so a lot of spiritual traditions say it's just this. The one thing that's thinging everywhere. So that's the real world where you are a no mind, no self within the split mind. And that's the lawns of heaven. And then heaven is simply, Jesus mythologically says God takes the last step. But really there's nothing left apart from God, which is what you were all the time as God's extension. And so all that happens is the last of the illusions fall away. So from that place of having no identity, no sense of identification whatsoever, just complete non-conceptual, and understanding that there's nothing, there's no separateness in the world and no sin, guilt, and fear, and all is well, from that space, even the world can be let go. And there's a state of perfect being, which is heaven. Anyway, that's my take on the question. The problem with the question is it again, with all these things, it's posed from a presumption that there is a separate self that's left heaven and needs to return to it. But there's not. You are heaven. You just think you are consciousness. You think you have an identity, which is a limitation, instead of the fact that you have no identity, but are a pure beingness, which is love. Right, let's take another question. I know that there are no good or bad decisions, just decisions made in the moment, guidance. However, I'm also aware that the ego thoughts that say you're guilty, you made the wrong decision, you're a bad person. This is insanity of the ego, always judging or justifying. I am aware. However, in all honesty, it is still a heavy energy and very uncomfortable. Okay, let's be very clear. Forgiveness is not uncomfortable. Being an ego is uncomfortable. So forgiveness does not cause me to feel upset and pain and frustration and hatred and exhaustion. Forgiveness does not make me feel that. Being an ego makes me feel that. And if we are practicing um, forgiveness, and it feels, heavy and um, difficult and challenging, we're doing it wrong, because forgiveness is looking at the ego without making a big deal out of it, looking at the ego without calling it sinful and guilty and evil and wrong. It's looking at the ego without judging it. I just can't say that often enough, because mindlessness will keep wiping that out of your mind and you'll still judge. The problem isn't the decision for the ego. The problem is that we despise ourselves for it. We hate ourselves for it. That's the problem. And forgiveness is looking at our ego without despising ourselves for it, without hating ourselves for it. That's what forgiveness is, because only that brings the presence, the non-conceptual self, this noticer that has no objective qualities, only looking at the ego without making a big deal out of it, without fighting it, without turning this into a big deal. So we need to practice the course with a very light touch. If this becomes a really serious business, no, that's wrong, because it's flypaper, because you're trying to do something or move something or change something or become something, instead of allowing yourself to remember what you already are by doing nothing. So, over and over again, we need to return to these concepts, because everyone thinks, okay, I've got that, I've got that. And then they come into a situation where they have an ego attack, and it's like, how do I fix it? What do I do? I can't remember the formula. How do I get rid of the darkness? No. Can you just notice there's identification as a story there, which is the cause of all your pain? And so you just drop all the stories about who did it to you, and you go, oh, look, there's still fear in the ego. My wrong mind here coming up to be healed. Thank you, world, for showing it to me. There's still hatred here. And can I bring it to what I am as this self that has no objective qualities, this non-judgmental awareness, this unlimited self that we all are? But the desire to get rid of the ego is ego. The desire to fix the ego is ego. The desire to shout it down is ego. The desire to be a happier ego is obviously ego. And you have to do nothing. This is a very light touch. Lots of people will go, oh, this forgiveness process, this course, it's a very heavy process. No, it's not. Being an ego is a heavy process. That's what's heavy. That's what's exhausting. That's what's miserable. The course is saying, stop blaming everyone for it. It is saying that, because we spent our whole lives trying to feel better about how miserable we are and how much we despise ourselves and hate ourselves and how inadequate we feel. We spent our whole lives with only one strategy for improving that situation, which is blaming everyone else for it. And never looking at the fact that my decision to be an ego is the cause of all my pain. So the course is interrupting that. But again, the course is not the cause of the pain. The cause of the pain is a mistaken decision I've made in my mind to be separate, to be an ego, to be a separate self with private thoughts. a thinker of thoughts, a limitation of what I am. That's the cause of all pain. And Jesus is saying, now you can escape. There's a way out of this mistake you've made. You have to look on the problem the way it is, not the way you've set it up. But this isn't beating yourself around the head with a stick. This is looking at what you've done without judging it, without hating yourself, without despising yourself. Looking at yourself, choosing to identify as an ego and not hating yourself. Just noticing it without commentary, without judgment. And that returns you to the truth of your invulnerability, because you are that which is without judgment. You are non-judgmental awareness. That's what you are. It doesn't matter what you believe you are. It's all nonsense. It's not true. That's why salvation's already over. That's why the atonement is done. That's why it was undone in the same moment it seemed to happen. Because you already are what you are, and you're not what you're not. There's a temporary situation where you think you're something you're not, but it's wrong. It's not true. You already are what you were created to be. There's nothing to become at all. You are already what you are. Atonement's over. Salvation is done. You already are the heaven you've always been. That's the truth. But lies persist in your mind. Oh no, but I'm separate and I'm bad and I need to blame other people for what an awful person I am, so I don't have to take the blame for it. But none of it's true. It's all just based on the premises that you're separate, that there is a separate self here. But it's not true. Earlier in the group, someone asked, but well, what if we don't accomplish this in this lifetime? What if we don't do everything the Course is telling us to do in this lifetime? But you already are what you are. That's what we keep doing. We keep embracing the lie, but I am the separate thing. How do I fix it? And you don't. You let it go. There's nothing to do except let go. Adyashanti has the most beautiful quote. He says, in the end, it's all very simple, whether you let go into the silence or not. Whether you let go of all the concepts of what you are and just be this non-conceptual self. But the thing is, you already are that. The only question is, will you let go of the lie? It doesn't really make sense to say, well, what if I, the lie, don't realize I'm the truth in this imaginary situation called life? People aren't awakening. The one life awakens from the dream of people. And you already are that life. And you've never been a person. There's a person there. It's just that's not what you are. There's a person there apparently, but it's not what you are. You are the one life. The nothing that is everything. You think you're a something, but you're not. You have never been a something. That would be a limitation on God's creation, which is limitless. You are the nothing, which is invulnerability, immortality, oneness, holiness, and love. Right. Eli, are you still with us?
Yes, I've been in and out about 30 times now, but
loads of forgiveness lessons.
the thing is, it just automatically comes back on.
Yes.
And then I haven't lost any of the questions. There's only been one question in the
Good.
chat, but
Everyone's horrified and shocked, speechless. Go ahead with the question, please, Eli. If anyone wants to
okay,
ask a question, you can put your hand up. Go
this
ahead.
is from Lane Landry. Is this forgiveness process the same as step 5 of the development of trust, learning to lay all judgment aside and ask only what we really want in every circumstance?
Yes. I mean, the course is just this book that keeps saying the same thing over and over and over again in lots of different ways. And a bit like myself, because I just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again in millions of different ways. And people keep saying to me, "Oh, I never knew that, and that makes perfect sense," but they'll forget about it tomorrow. I'll have to say the same thing over and over and over again because flypaper is a thing. Um, it's mindlessness. It's that we keep going, yeah, but hang on, I the separate self. How do I do forgiveness? Forgiveness is remembering you're not a separate self. And those levels of trust that Jesus talks about in the course. It's just about all the different steps we take until we're ready to realize that the thing that is valueless is the separate self. So in the beginning, we realize that what's valueless is grievances and holding on to the past and judgment. That's where we come to. And then we're practicing that. And that gives us this nice sort of like pleasant phase in our life where things are going pretty good, and we realize we feel better when we forgive, and we feel better when we don't hold on to judgments, and that's when people can start kind of going, "Oh, holy ego." Fab course students. But Jesus is going, then you have to realize you haven't come nearly as far as you thought, because actually you didn't realize what the valueless thing was. The actual valueless thing is the separate self, individuality. And so that's where Jesus is going with the development of trust. That's the eventual realization. That's the thing that has no value. What has no value is a separate identity, because it was the cause of all the pain and the hurt and the judgment and the unforgiveness and the misery. I mean, the ego will get caught in the flypaper and go, how could you not be a separate self in the world? But the thing is, you're not a separate self. You've never been one. So this isn't about, letting go of something that's intrinsic to your nature and how could you survive without it. You're not one now. It's just pure smoke and mirrors. It's just believed thoughts. And so the whole point of the course is that you can operate absolutely fine, apparently in the world, without any sense of being a separate self. I mean, it's important to understand that's where the course is taking you. The course is saying, but you don't need that belief in separateness. So the course is very much so saying, appearing to still be here in the world and operate within the world, that's perfectly fine. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. There's just no separate self here anymore. So there's no more pain, and there's no more separateness, and there's only love as the truth of everything and everyone. And you're not separate from it or other than it. Just this. And you don't even need thinking to make decisions, because just intuitively, it requires no analysis. Thinking happens through you. The thinking of all the universe happens through you. Because there's no imagined separate self there to be usurping the throne, to be in the way of the thinking of all the universe operating through you. Because again, you're giving up being a something to realize that you are the nothing that is everything. And that's love. So that's where Jesus was in the real world. So it's absolutely nothing. That's not an impossible state. That's lots of people have done it. They've gotten to a no self, which was the truth all along, but they've let go of the lie of identity. And even though some spiritual paths would attempt to jump you from ego identity to the non-duality, to the pure beingness, to the lack of identity, to the no self, within the split mind. A Course in Miracles is different. The Course in Miracles is saying, no, you use this awareness you are in the Holy Spirit, this witness, this right-minded self, which just keeps pulling you out of the lie that you're a separate self, and allows all the ego conditioning to be undone, and allows all the emotions to be freed from the unconscious and cleared. And that brings you to the no self, which is the end of suffering. Okay, Sherry, I think might as well go to yourself. I think we just had one in the chat box. Go for it. Just take yourself off mute.
Hi, Keith. Hi, everybody. Keith, I just want to thank you so much for your patience. I know you keep telling us over and over the same thing, different ways, but it does take a while, and then you think you get it, like you said, and then the next day you're down the rabbit hole. So I just greatly, greatly appreciate your persistence and your repetitiveness and that with us. And what helped me a lot too, and I'm surprised this is new to me, and it's probably not new to a lot of people here, but Ken's, and I shared this in the chat. This helped me so much with your teachings.
Very cool.
And so I just want to say, between this and your teachings, I just feel like I've learned a lot. So I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think, you see, because again, I'm just saying the same thing over and over and over again in many different ways, but there's something else happening when we meet together. And there's something else happening when you keep reading the same things over and over again. And that something else is the beginnings of the realization of what you are outside of thoughts. It's the felt sense of being when you're listening to me or anyone else talk. And there is this felt sense of being in the background. Now, again, you can't put a description on it. You can't conceptualize it. It doesn't have any qualities that you can cling to, but it's just this awareness, what it is you are, that is aware of all the sights and the sounds and the concepts and the thoughts and the feelings and the smells and the sounds. That which is aware of all of it without becoming any of it. That unchanging thing that is the awareness of all experience, but that has itself no objective qualities. And again, it's a felt sense of being. And so as we proceed on our spiritual path, it's just a sense of peace in the background. And in the beginning, that might just be there reading the course, or it might be there listening to a talk that you resonate with, or it could happen by practicing forgiveness. But as you persist, as you keep going, it kind of doesn't go away. And there comes a point, a tipping point, where you realize it's what you are. And that would be an awakening. That would be a total realization that that what you thought you were was just a story. Everyone gets there in different ways. But it's really, I would say to everyone, when you read the course, when you listen to talks, when you practice forgiveness, when you do the workbook lessons, just begin to notice the piece in the back of your mind that isn't thinking. It's aware of thoughts happening, but it's not the thinker of them. It's unchanging. It's always the same. And that's your identity. It doesn't mean there's not a person here. Like right now, there's a body mind that's having a discussion here, but it's not what I am. So the body mind doesn't go anywhere. The personality doesn't go anywhere. There's just a fundamental identity shift whereby, but it's not what I am. That's it. That's all. Yes, there's a story, there's a body, there's a story about the body, there's a personality. That's not going anywhere. We're not trying to bypass anything. We're not trying to pretend anything is not here or that we're not noticing it, or that's not what this is about. This is just about a fundamental shift in identity. And when we do that, then the body mind, all the perceptions can start to soften and heal and shift and change. And all the repressed unconscious stuff can come up to be healed in the light of allowing, non-judgmental allowing. But yeah, it's just to notice that piece in the back of your mind when it's there and begin to understand that that's the truth of who you are. That's your invulnerability and your immortality. And there, in that piece, we're all one. And everything else is just thoughts. So that piece in your mind is the realization that there's just the ocean. So even as the waves, and even as you're behaving like you're a wave, prioritizing yourself as a wave, trying to be a good wave, a healthy wave, trying to avoid the rocks in competition with the other waves, there's that piece in the back of your mind that says this is all water. And it's just to begin to allow that realization to settle until you're ready to go, okay, right, the wave's just a story. There was never anything to it but the water. And we're just practicing that with forgiveness all the time. And it's what all the workbook lessons are about. Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Are you still with us, Eli?
I am. I've been out in twice since Sherry's been talking, but yeah.
Anything else we need to deal with in the chat box?
Yes, I just got an anonymous.
Okay.
Could you please ask if it's okay to just drop aware of and look at the apparent things, thoughts, feelings, sensations, no things. There is no at either. I'm not quite sure what the question is there, but
Not quite sure either.
so I tried to read it again.
No, because I think it's just I'm presuming it's an attempt to have a more precise language. Language is woefully inadequate for talking about non-duality. So we need to acknowledge that first of all. It's symbols of symbols twice removed from reality. The point about awareness is that what you are is that which is aware of all experience. And experience is for now just made up of objects. And what you are is not an object. Again, A Course in Miracles is a particular path of non-duality, which is what you do within duality to awaken to non-duality. It's not about jumping straight into non-duality. And so A Course in Miracles is teaching us that as a right mind, which is not your true self, but your right mind is a non-judgmental awareness of the wrong mind. And so right-mindedness is looking at the ego without judgment. So it is looking at thoughts and feelings without judgment. And that will undo the wrong mind. And then its job done, the right mind can dissolve. And now you have the perfect beingness, which I think is the point of your question. So A Course in Miracles is not trying to jump you from being a person to being a no self. It is not trying to do that. A Course in Miracles is about identifying as a right-minded self, not your true self, which is no identity, but a right-minded self, which is a non-judgmental awareness. And when awareness's job is done and the ego is undone, awareness dissolves and there's just beingness without identity. So it's just to be clear, that's the Course in Miracles route. It's not about jumping straight to non-duality. Cool. Thank you for that. Does that bring us to an end, Eli?
It does, but I just want to add what the anonymous said after your speech.
Mhm.
She said, "Thank you. It's perfect. He got it exactly right." And she's throwing you kisses.
Okay, good.
So she's happy with your answer.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. When we, I mean, look, I think one of the most beautiful things about the time that we live in is that we're really seeing the fulfillment of what Helen heard when she was told there was going to be this cosmic speed up, this quickening, and that, of course, Miracles was just one very small part of it. And she was going to play this small part in this cosmic speed up, celestial speed up. I never quite remember I think it was a celestial speed up. And so we live in a time where everyone is saying the same thing. And so we have, Rupert Spira, we have Eckhart Tolle, we have Byron Katie, we have Angelo DeLullo, we have all the non-duality people, and everyone is saying the same thing. They really are. Even in non-duality, they talk about identifying as, awareness to begin with, and then in time, awareness gives way to just being. Everyone is saying the same thing with lots of different, vocabulary and lots of different methods and lots of different. I personally think you can benefit from knowing about all of them once you don't get caught in. You need to have some discernment where you can see everyone is saying the same thing in different ways and with different language. But I think it's an incredible time we live in where the truth is just ubiquitous almost at this stage, and everyone is saying the same thing. Adyashanti, again, one of the most important spiritual teachers of our generation. Everyone is saying the same thing. Everyone is saying the same thing. And it's wonderful because most of these teachers are coming after the course was published, and it's total validation of everything that was said in the course. Yeah, I think it's great. Anyone want to say anything before we wrap up?
We have one more.
All right, let's do that.
Okay, this just came through on a private Facebook message to me. He says, "Tell Keith," and I'm sure he's just wishing you a happy St. Patrick's Day, but he says, "Fuck forgiveness. I just want Irish stew." That's from Lloyd Lapp.
I've never been a stew lover. Give me a nice spaghetti carbonara any day.
I'll tell him you said.
Oh, guys, thanks a million for being with us today. Thanks for your attention and your courtesy and your contribution. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll catch up in the group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Keith.
Keith.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Thank